Rao and Jen Huther are partners in Vine and the two women behind the Social Herbivore, where they aim to elevate plant-based entertaining. They also dream teamed up on the Social Herbivore, their soon-to-be released book. Through this guide, they're removing the guesswork on how to pair vegan-friendly wines with plant-based food. So we are sitting down today with Priya, foodie, wine lover, entertainer, writer, TV host, vegan food consultant, vegetarian since 1995, vegan since 2011, Airbnb-er, and a consummate hostess with the mostest.
I try.
Thanks so much for inviting us over to your very cool backyard.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if everyone can see it, but we're actually sitting under some grape vines here, and it looks amazing, and it's nice and relaxing.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Now, Jen, your business partner, has had a love affair with wine for over 20 years. She's passionate about plant-based food and promoting uplifting of all women in wine. And she became Canada's first female master sommelier.
Yeah.
That was in 2011, correct?
That's right, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm hoping I'll be forgiven if I simply refer to her as a somm, so I don't...
Well, you should say a master somm
A
then.
master,
Master
somm.
somm.
There we go.
Because there's very different thing to be a sommelier to a master sommelier.
Amazing.
So who doesn't love good food? But so many believe that a plant-based diet is somehow limiting and boring. For me, taking animals off my plate actually opened up a whole new world for me, cuisine-wise. As a self-proclaimed foodie, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And honestly, when we talk to chefs, it is so interesting the difference between chefs who are open to plant-based and those who are not. Because I tend to find that those chefs who look at plant-based requests with sort of a frown and
Disdain.
They've stopped playing, you know. And I think if you're a chef, if you're an artist, you're a musician, whatever, it's all about playing and it's about exploring. So we find that the chefs who look at a plant-based meal request as an opportunity, they're the ones who really create some magical things. And it's really, it's always so
Yeah, the other ones are kind of stuck in a rut, stuck in a moment in time.
So, for the book, you created the dishes, and Jen was tasked with the unfortunate job of having to taste them all. So, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it was a 3-year process. So now I've been working on this book since 2015, sort of the concept for the book, when I first realized that, first of all, not all wine is vegan, eureka, and then trying to look up information on how to pair with plant-based food. Now, at that time, I was in a relationship with a somm, so that's how this whole love affair of mine kind of grew and blossomed. But after...
Not a master somm.
Not a master, no.
See?
He went from somm to advanced.
There you go.
But not a master somm. But once I met Jen 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, and suggested this book to her, she was really intrigued because she is the only master somm in the world who's really dedicated a part of her passion to plant-based dining. She's very passionate about the environment, about animals, and health reasons, so many reasons that she chooses to eat plant-based in her
Sounds
own
all
life.
right.
She's pretty cool, So yes, I created the 40 dishes, and we spent 3 years tasting them with bottles and bottles of wine and 7 or 8 dishes at a time, picking, and it was tough research, let me tell you. But we did it for you all.
It's a sacrifice, but it had to be made.
Exactly.
Now, must confess, I'm not really a wine drinker, but the idea of wine and food pairing really did intrigue me. It sounded appealing. It seems, again, like a whole new world opens up, much like when we stopped eating animals. How satisfying is it to find that kind of aha explosion of taste?
Well, first of all, I want to say, I know that you, Sue, you said you are a beer drinker.
I am.
So I think, I love it when people say I don't like wine, because I would say, tell me what you think, what you like to drink, and I bet you there's a wine that you would like. And with you being a beer drinker, I bet there are a lot of natural wines that you would probably like, or pet nat, because they have more of that funky feeling and that flavor, and a lot of bubble, a lot of that effervescence. So I would say try some natural or pet nat wines, and I bet will convert you.
I don't think it'll be too tough. I'll twist
that rubber arm of yours.
Yeah.
So, for those that aren't aware, you kind of touched on it. We're planning on asking some questions about this, but tell us a little bit about what that means, ideas of unfiltered wines and orange wines, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole topic in and of its own. We like to group the various types of winemaking, and that includes biodynamic, organic, sustainable, vegan friendly, of course, and then natural wines. So those are 5 very different approaches to winemaking. Not all of them mean the wine is vegan. And basically, the knowledge you need to know about what makes wine not vegan. When we talk about vegan wine, we're talking about what's inside the bottle, the juice inside the bottle. So to that extent, they use fining agents such as things that were commonly found around the farm or around the vineyard: oxblood, fish bladder, egg whites, casein, to clarify the wine so that it's not cloudy, because nobody wants a cloudy wine. Now, natural wines don't do that. So already natural wines, you can be safe knowing that they are, by their means, vegan friendly. But a lot of people prefer to have a very clear wine, so they would use some of those agents to clarify the wines. Now there are so many great alternatives, vegan friendly alternatives to that. Pea protein, animal free gelatin.
Pea protein
vegan
just seems to be the
gelatins.
answer to everything.
Yeah, it'll build you some muscles too.
Exactly. It is all filtered out at that point, but for attaching to the yeast to go down and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Bentonite, right, is also another good one. That's clay.
Activated charcoal, time, and gravity will do the trick.
Yeah.
So it's often about patience, and a lot of the vegan-friendly winemakers we've talked to, and they may not be vegan, but their wines are vegan-friendly because they don't use those filtering agents. But they often talk about how it's really about letting the juice do its thing and just letting it settle. It will all clarify on its own, and those make some of the best wines.
So your sort of really your big contribution is in the pairing of the foods with the wines in that, right?
Yes, in the food side of things.
And did you ever have a situation where you thought something was going to go really great together and it's just like, don't do that?
Yeah, I think one of the common misconceptions for me are chocolate and red wine. Now, there are red wines that will go well with chocolate, but you cannot take that as a blanket statement, and just like a Pinot Noir with chocolate is not going to be very tasty at all. So I think there are certain things like that. If you're going to have a darker chocolate with maybe some raisins in it or something, and you pair it with an Amarone that has a lot of richness and a lot of depth, then that might be a great, or when a Malbec, you know, great pairing for some chocolates. But things like that, there are some things that just don't work.
What about the flip side? Was there ever like a food item or a wine item that you're like you weren't really crazy about, but once you got them paired together, it's like, wow, there's a synergy that's amazing.
Absolutely, and this is what Sue was asking me earlier about creating those perfect taste explosions, because really it doesn't really matter. If you don't care about wine, then you just drink whatever you want with whatever meal you're having. What we're trying to do is create an experience where both the food and the wine taste better together. So it's just this, you know, you put that wine, you know, as you're eating something, and it's just like, oh my God, this just created a whole new level of what this tastes like. So I'll give you an example. Neither Jen nor myself love Moscato. It's a fairly sweet wine, very bubbly. It's a great starter wine. It's a great summer sipper. Girls love it. I don't know about guys so much, but it's not it's not a wine that we would generally choose to open.
It's not a wine that a man may want to admit to loving.
Well, it's not a wine we would choose to have a glass of, you know. But when we paired it with a spicy Thai curry, amazing.
Wow.
Amazing. And that is something we never would have expected. First of all, the bubbles and spice don't always mix very well. And just really, we would never have thought to pair Moscato with probably anything other than maybe a dessert of some sort. And it was fantastic.
Well, interestingly, then, when you talk about these pairings, it is much like a relationship where you're bringing two different people together and they complement one another.
Opposites attract.
There you go, like the spice and the bubbles together, right?
Exactly.
Somebody a little on the feisty side and someone a little more.
And on the flip side, you have, so you can do the opposites attract, absolutely, because that's often a really great way to pair. And the other option, going to the other end of the spectrum, is what grows together goes together. So you want to find the similarities in the food and the wine, which is often why, well, Italian wines go so well with Italian food.
Okay.
They're grown in the same soil. They have some of the same, feels, flavors in their wines. Spanish wine goes with Spanish food. It's just what grows together goes together.
Absolutely. Do you defer to palate preferences, or is there something more complicated or sophisticated when you're trying to make those?
I don't know. I mean, I think the thing about Jen is that she is a master som, and it took her 10 years and a lot of training to get that designation. There are fewer than 300 people in the world with that designation. So it's a very difficult title to achieve. And she is not a snob. And really, we can tell you everything we want to tell you about pairing, and she can sit down and have conversations with you for hours. But if you don't like it, you don't like it. At the end of the day, there are people who say, I don't like red wine, or I just don't like white wine. And if that's, different strokes for different folks. So whatever you like, great. We are going to give you some basics and some concepts to help you along the road. And so in the book too, we have 2 pairings for each dish, except for the desserts. So she does a high and a low, just to accommodate different budgets. And also sometimes we try with the white and the red to give an alternative.
It's really interesting. A good friend of mine, Jeremy Day, who's a sommelier, he's always saying, it's your mouth, you've been using it all your life. It's like yum or yuck. It's like anything beyond that is all refining. Right?
Yeah. I mean, you might try that Moscato and spicy Thai curry and say, you know what, I just don't like it because I don't like the bubbles, or I don't like white wine, or I don't like sweet wine. There's 100 reasons you may not like it, and that's your prerogative.
Definitely.
Yeah, so in doing the book, then, were there any areas where you and Jen kind of parted ways just based on your own palate preference, or where you really loved something and she wasn't as struck on it?
No, there weren't really.
Oh, that's cool.
There weren't, yeah. I mean, not to say I have a refined palate, I don't. And I'm not a som by any means, nor do I have any
More of
aspirations
a gourmand than a gourmet.
Yeah, I'm a wine lover,
Yeah.
not a wine connoisseur.
Yeah.
So there is a difference, but I have tasted a lot of wines with a lot of soms. I've been to a lot of industry tastings. I've had conversations with a lot of winemakers. So I think my understanding of wine, for whatever that means, has progressed. So no, there weren't any pairings where she thought it was fantastic and I was like, yeah, I don't know about this. And even if there were, I'm going to defer to the master som.
Many mistakenly believe that biodynamic wine is automatically vegan. But after reading, I was looking at this thing called a Demeter Biodynamic Farm Standard, and it suggests otherwise. So can you just speak about that?
Yeah, sure. Traditional biodynamics do have some preparation. So there's cow horn preparation, which is the most strange. Biodynamics is very interesting in many ways. It looks at the vineyard as an ecosystem of its own. It goes by the phases of the moon. I like to call it winery witchcraft. But they put this preparation where they fill a cow horn with manure and they put it inside the earth. And I think that's supposed to help fertilize or something. So obviously if you're vegan, you're not going to appreciate that. I don't know how they procure those horns, whether they wait until they get them off of an animal that has passed by natural means, or if they need it to be from a live animal. But there are a lot of things like that in biodynamics that are a little bit iffy. It depends on how
it's
vegan...
the woo part of the winery.
Yeah, and it's how vegan do you want your wine to be. I mean, these 3 bottles we have in front of us are 3 of the vegan-friendly wineries from Ontario that we have on our directory. And when we, again, talk about what's vegan, we talk about what's in the bottle. We're not talking about the glue on the label.
That's right.
We're not talking about the wax on the seal. We're not talking about whether or not they use animal labor in the vineyards. Or manure. Some vegans say if it has manure in the vineyards, we won't. So there are different degrees for everyone, and we try to be as judgment-free as possible and really stick to talking about what's inside the bottle. Right. So that's one of the reasons that biodynamics is not vegan-friendly. The other thing, often they use animals such as ducks or sheep to eat some of the insects off the vines, which is great in and of itself instead of spraying. However, if you ask the winery where do those animals go at the end of the season, you may not be happy with it.
They don't return your text, right? They don't return your phone call on that one.
Although there are things like Bardivore, which is a
fantastic resource,
an amazing resource where people do push them on those questions a little bit and try to get responses from the winery, and then based on those responses the information is updated. It's interesting actually to kind of read that website because of it, because they actually put in whatever the response is
Yeah, you got
from the
people
maker.
pushing them back and
straight from the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of touched on unfiltered wine a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the benefits of unfiltered wine?
Do you mean in terms of like natural wine,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
you mean
Yeah.
just vegan-friendly wines?
Well, just in, your feedback on
Yeah. Well, to me, and again,
We
from
might be
our-
just using terms, we think they're synonymous, but they're not. I
Well,
don't know.
Well, if you mean what do we think in terms of vegan-friendly wines?
well, we can
Sure.
start there.
Okay, because I know that there's an interesting contradiction, I think, sometimes with consumers. If you look at organic, for example,
Mhm.
when it comes to produce, or even if you're a meat eater, when it comes to organic meat, it's better.
Right.
It's automatically, we want that. When it comes to wine, if people hear organic wine, and when organic became a big thing in the wine world,
Mhm.
at first it was frowned upon.
Mhm.
People thought it must be lesser than.
Mhm.
We are finding
They're
that
thinking
has
there's no
been-
alcohol in it or something, right?
right, or that somehow it's been farmed differently to affect it
Yeah.
in an adverse way. And
Yeah.
we get a little bit of that with vegan too, that some wineries don't want to label it as vegan friendly because consumers often think it's going to be less than. But as I was saying, when we were talking to winemakers around the world, they look at it as letting the grape do its thing,
Mhm.
letting time and gravity really be the driving factors.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's better
Yes.
in a
That's
lot
beautiful.
of their viewpoints.
If you were, say, growing grapes out in BC, and for example, there have been all these wildfires and that sort of
Yeah.
thing, right?
Yeah.
Can one taste the climate or the
Sure.
what's going on?
Sure,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
So
I
can
wish-
you, like say you were to take a moment in time, you've got this bottle of wine,
Yeah.
and you taste that, it's like, that's when they had the wildfire.
Well, yeah, I wish Jen was here to talk about that, because when you get to the master somm level, it is amazing how you can look at a glass of wine, smell it, taste it, and then you have to identify where it's from, approximate year,
Mhm.
what the grape is, you know, what region, what the price range is. Like, you have to really know the world of grapes and how different styles vary. You know, a Malbec is a Malbec, but it's also a Cahors. So it's the same grape, but done in two different very styles depending on where it's grown in the world.
Mhm.
So you
Maybe
definitely
keep
can.
up on your current events too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it is tasting a moment in time and
Yeah.
in history. That's the concept of terroir that is
Mhm.
so often talked about in winemaking. And it's a concern this year in BC with the wildfires, because that smoke taint
Mhm.
can get into the grapes. So it's going to be interesting to see how winemakers try to correct that in the
Because it's essentially changing the palette of what you're working with, ingredients wise. Like if you're doing a painting, you know, now I've got this smoke note that I need to somehow
Yeah.
balance out with other things, right?
Exactly. Or if there's too much rain, you know,
Mhm.
it can create
Or
some
mold.
fungus and mold. So there's
Mhm.
lots of problems.
On that, what are some of the regions that you've had the pleasure of being able to go taste the wines in those areas and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think I would
And
say
who's
France.
left on the bucket list?
Well, there's so many. Plenty on the bucket list for sure. My dream is to go to Italy and taste Italian wines, because
Mhm.
really for me, Amarone is my favorite wine,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
Tuscany, I mean, it's just, to me, that is the epitome of wine and just travel. But I've been to France several
Mhm,
times
mhm.
and been to a lot of the wineries there, and it's just, it's a real treat to be able to go and taste the wine where it's from.
Oh,
Even then to
yeah.
come back here and to pick up a bottle from a vineyard that you've been to is amazing. I've been to
Yeah, I was
California.
there.
Yeah, it's amazing to then know a bit of the story and the place of what you're doing.
Well, you get that little moment of nostalgia then as well, right?
Mhm.
The time when I was in Paris.
Oh, yeah, you know, the lavender, it was so pretty.
Oh, may we?
Oui.
Okay, well, let's talk about the book.
Let's talk about it.
The photography is stunning, and I mean, I only saw the PDF copy, and in rifling, you know, going through the pages here, it's absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
Loads of tips for people, and as you were saying, kind of both a value and a splurge wine choice that makes it very inclusive
Yes.
for anybody, I suppose. So there's really something for everyone. But what makes it so unique? What is it about this
Well,
book?
it's the first book of its kind. There has never been a book
That's pretty
talking
unique.
about wine pairings for plant-based food. Even now, with all the resources on the internet, it is still tough to find information on pairing. There are a lot more people doing it. There are lots of sommeliers around the world who are vegan themselves and who focus on vegan wine. But you will find very limited information still on how to pair different things with food. I do want to give a shout out to Kat Rizza, who was our photographer, amazing Toronto-based photographer, also vegan. We worked very hard to have the entire team behind this book be vegetarian or vegan friendly, like as plant-based as possible. Our makeup artist, Shannon, was amazing, and you know, even the person who laid out and designed it is also plant-based herself. So it was really important to us to have as many people believe in the ethics behind the book as possible.
You mentioned earlier you've been working on this book for how long now?
Since 2015.
You were just a young girl back then, right?
Even then I was not a young girl. But you know, being vegan has preserved me quite nicely.
Did the pandemic have anything to do with the affecting of the timing of the release and that sort of stuff?
Absolutely, absolutely, because it's so hard. I mean, we self-published this book. We had talked to several publishers, and we talked to several publishers, but we wanted to have creative control over the book. We also wanted to get it out soon, and most of the publishers we talked to were saying it's like a 18-month timeline, and we had all the content, we just had to put the pieces together. So that said, neither of us are doing this full time. This is really a passion project for both of us. So trying to find the time to dedicate to even create 6 to 8 dishes and collect, you know, 20 bottles of wine, doing that repeatedly was a challenge. So COVID did give us a condensed time period where we could focus on this because we couldn't do anything.
Got nothing else to do, so.
Exactly.
So, does an individual have to be plant-based to really get value out of the book?
Absolutely not. We would say that this book is a bridge. You know, the point is, and Jen in her own life, she eats plant-based at home, but for her work, she cannot be fully, like her work involves non-plant-based dining as well. She has to be able to pair for everybody, all the consumers she interacts with. But the point of this book is that if you have a daughter-in-law who's coming over for Christmas and you don't know what to cook and she's tired of eating just the side dishes, well, we're going to give
We've all been there.
We've all been there, you know? We want to give you a bunch of recipes to inspire you with dishes that everybody at the
Well,
table
in
can
these
enjoy.
recipes, they just ran the complete spectrum.
Yeah, we really did try, you know? We tried to cover a lot of different types of cuisines, so different ethnic cuisines. We tried to cover different flavor profiles so that, because this isn't a cookbook per se, you know, it's not a book with 150 recipes, because that's not the point of it. The social herbivore for us is about conversations that happen over the dining table and about those magic moments with friends and loved ones. Yeah, so it's about entertaining, and that's why it's split up into small talk, big talk, and sweet talk, as opposed to
cute.
Appetizers, mains,
That was really cute.
you know, thanks.
It was really lovely to see that you were supporting the Toronto Vegetarian Food Bank through the book sales. What made them your charity of choice?
They're our charity of choice for everything we do because, again, for us, it's about food and dining should not be reserved for the wealthy. These are experiences that everybody should be able to enjoy. And that is specifically why Jen wanted to put a splurge and a budget-friendly pairing to make it accessible for everyone. Because even she and I, we don't drink $150 bottles of wine every day. And I never buy $150 wine. I'll be honest.
If somebody wants to buy it for you, like you're not going to be a snob and turn them down.
You'll make sure to find the perfect pairing if somebody brings it over.
Happy to do that.
Yeah.
And I've tasted my share
Like,
of
I ain't no
fabulous wines.
snob. I'll drink your wine if you want to pay for it.
Absolutely, and through meeting winemakers and being at tastings, you know, I've had the opportunity to taste some fabulous wines, but it's not my habit to go out and buy $40 bottles of wine. I probably spend between $15 to $22 for a bottle of wine, usually on the lower end, in my basic everyday life. So the Toronto Vegetarian Food Bank for us is just a nonsensical, it is. Sorry, I'm going to start back.
It's the obvious choice.
Yeah, the Toronto Vegetarian Food Bank for us is the perfect logical partner.
It's the perfect pairing.
It's the perfect pairing. We really believe in the work that they do.
Oh, Alex, yeah.
Yeah, the work that they do is so important,
Yeah.
and they are the only food bank where you can get specifically food for a plant-based diet, and that is so hard. And you shouldn't have to compromise your ethics
Exactly.
for your need to feed your family.
Absolutely. So the book itself, when is it available? Where is it going to be available? What's this?
Well, our official launch date is October 5th.
Okay.
And it will be available, the ebook will be available on our site. It will also be available on Amazon. So you can do a order to print, print on demand, or get the ebook. But we're encouraging people to come to us directly for the ebook. And the hard copy is available in Toronto, and it will be available in Niagara and in Prince Edward County at a couple of specific wineries.
Yeah.
Are you
you've got,
prepared to let us know that now? Or?
We do have them. I just want to make sure that all our ducks are in order before I
Oh,
announce
okay,
Gotcha.
it.
because
Okay.
here I am. I was just ready to blurt it out. So
Well-
yeah, you said that.
It'll all be on our website.
And perhaps by the time this is released, it will be written right down here.
Yeah.
There you go.
Are you by the way, are you still offering your vegan wine and cheese bundles?
You know, those were so popular,
My
but
God,
no,
they
because
look
it
so
was just, it was something that we didn't really have the time to
Yeah.
facilitate, again, because this is
Bring
something
them
we do.
back.
I know, but
Bring them back.
we did all of those through Wandering Deli and
Yeah.
Sausage Party, and they collaborate together often, so if you're looking for charcuterie boards, go to Kira at
Yeah.
Wandering Deli, and she'll put it all together for you.
Yeah.
And if you need a wine pairing, just ask us, and we'll, or consult the winery directory on our
And get a
website.
copy of the book.
And
And
get a
then
copy
you
of
can
the book.
peruse.
Yeah.
Just fun. Can you tell us a little bit about Terra and how people can go about meeting her?
Yes, so Terra is my Airbnb property for plant-based vacations, and I really wanted to have a space that could respect that, not only in my own life, but for people, for guests like yourselves who are plant-based or vegan and want to travel but don't want to be in a space that has had animal products in
Well,
it.
it's
So-
like somebody not wanting to stay in a smoking
Exactly.
a hotel room where they smoke.
Yeah, so Terra is located in Colborne, Ontario. It's just a 90-minute drive from Toronto, very close to Prince Edward County. We did a lot of the photos. We did actually most of the photos for the book at Terra, except for the food photos, which Kat did all on her own. But I put my heart and soul into that. It's a very eco-friendly retreat. All the furniture was bought from yard sales or secondhand. The stuff that I had to buy new was linens and towels for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And the mattresses, which were they're vegan mattresses, Casper brand,
Right.
partly because that's the name of one of my cats. So
I was wondering,
yeah. So I tried to be as eco-friendly in the decor of the place as possible as well, and people can find it on Airbnb. So for anyone who's interested in booking Terra or just looking at her, you can look up on Airbnb. It is Terra, home for plant-based vacations, and she's in Colborne, which is Colborne. I'm sure you'll write that down here too. But I encourage you to come and experience her. She is such a beautiful space. There's 4 bedrooms, so it can sleep 8 people, and it's very kid-friendly. And I feel so calm the minute I walk through her doors, and I think everyone out there will feel that same way.
Amazing.
Well, and as we were saying, you get the both of best worlds. Here you are in the city, living,
Yeah.
In
close to
the city.
downtown, in the city, yeah, and then off to that beautiful retreat.
Yeah.
And you have a little e-cookbook that kind of or just to help people.
Yeah,
prepare.
because again, it's not only for vegans. You know, I
Mhm.
wanted to make it accessible so people, and I've had probably the majority of my guests have been non-plant-based, but they're willing to experiment with plant-based, and that's my goal.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's who I want to reach.
Yeah.
Because I want them to experience a weekend or a week, whatever they book, and say, you know what, I actually enjoyed my time here, and I didn't even notice that I wasn't eating
Yeah.
any animal products. So my goal is to kind of, again, bridge that gap. It's always about bridging that gap and not creating any judgment. So it's open to everybody.
I love bridging gaps. Sometimes I get a little judgy. I admit it.
So, just so recap-wise, on your website, you've got a huge list of vegan-friendly wineries.
We do.
Can you tell us a little about that?
Yes, so it's a directory of Canada's vegan-friendly wineries, and these are all wineries that we have either visited ourselves or that we are familiar with There are a few in BC as well, but the majority of them are right here in Ontario. And it's another way for us, especially during COVID. We always want to support local farmers and local businesses. And I know that there is, again, this sentiment that Ontario wine isn't as good as other wine from other regions. And we are a new wine region, so our grapes are not 150 years old or anything like that, but we make some fantastic wines here, and we have some really talented winemakers. So I encourage people to test them out. There's wines for every budget.
Well, we used to always say that Canadian television shows sucked, right? But now we're getting a lot of good stuff coming out, so it's the
Absolutely.
same thing. We can extrapolate.
Right, and for those that are interested in wines that are outside of Canada, as we mentioned earlier, Bardivore is
Yeah.
an excellent place.
Yeah,
So-
founded by a Toronto couple, which is amazing. So yay, Toronto.
Yeah.
It is a really, really great resource because it is so hard to find wines that are vegan friendly. However, we're finding more and more wineries are putting a little V on
I've
their
noticed that
bottle,
it's
so
getting a lot
it is
easier.
Becoming a
much
selling
easier.
point.
It is becoming a selling point
Yeah.
because consumers are demanding it. So continue demanding it.
Yes.
So, for socials, give us all the details for your socials.
Sure, we'll also
They're going to be
be
sitting right here.
Yes, so Social Herbivore is socialherbivore.co, and our Instagram is @socialherbivore, and we're also on Facebook. And then on my private
Are you
side,
Social Herbivore on Facebook? Because I'm
Yes,
starting
we
to
are.
see a little pattern.
we're Social Herbivore. How did you guess that? Smart one there.
And you
Can't get nothing past me.
Nope.
and
on
you were
my
saying as well.
Yes, on my personal side, it's what Priya said. So that's where you can find information about Terra and about just some of the work I do on the vegan world side, vegan lifestyle side. So it's what Priya said on Instagram, Facebook, and website, whatpriyasaid.com.
Well,
What
Priya,
would Priya do? Okay. That's how I'm going to live my life from now on.
Well, sometimes you might be,
Get myself
just be
in
careful.
trouble.
Yeah.
well,
Final question,
oh,
and my fingers are crossed. Any possibility of a beer pairing follow-up book?
Oh, you know what? We're definitely open to doing pairings of all sorts on social and for our blog. But in terms of a whole book dedicated to it, I don't know. We might expand a little bit in terms of different beverages for the next book. But right now, we're all just focused on getting this fantastic book out
Yes,
of the
for
world.
sure.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
and well, I just want to say thank you so much for taking some time to be on the show. It was a pleasure to sit down with you in this wonderful space and to learn about all the amazing things that both you and Jen are doing. So thank
Oh,
you.
we got to meet Casper and Kaya and Isis and all your little bee friends who have been joining
Yeah,
us.
I only wish I could have put out the charcuterie and we could
Yeah.
have tasted with some of the foods, but the wasps wanted the food more than we did.
Yes.
It's all good. It was absolute pleasure. Thank you again.
Anyway, cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.